Great careers are not accidents, they're journeys built through clarity and intent. In every industry, there are such journeys that reveal true leadership, sacrifice, risk, and purpose. I'm Dirk, and this is The Pitch and the Catch, where we dive into choices, changes, and the careers they create. Welcome. Hi, today I'm joined by Vaishali Lara Kathuria, a senior investment manager at Norges Bank Investment Management, the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund that owns about 1.5% of every listed company in the world. Over the past decade, Vaishali's career has taken her from emerging market research to global investment strategy, winning roles at Schaefer Cullen Capital Management, Morgan Stanley, and Norges Bank itself. She was recognized as one of the new stars in business in Norway's leading business magazine Kapital and their 40 Under 40. And she also boasts other honors like the Rising Leaders Award. What makes her story stand out isn't just her success in high finance, but how intentional she's been every step of the way. Vaishali represents a new kind of professional, one who navigates complexity with clarity, purpose, and self-awareness. Today, we'll talk about how she built her career with intention, and how she helps others find focus in a world full of options, and what it means to turn randomness into momentum. Welcome, Vaishali. It is great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind words.
It's just what you've given us, and we've worked with it. No, it's your story, Vaishali. Hey, I have a very, very simple question in the beginning. It's with a seemingly obvious answer for you. Not everyone knows what it means to work in finance. So
Mm,
I'd love to explore that first. People envision Gordon Gekko or the Wolf of Wall Street, but apart from the long working hours, it presumably has it's a regular job as well. So could you enlighten us a little bit what it means to work in finance?
yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you get those questions that are seemingly simple, you
Yeah.
just choke completely. But no, I guess to start off, it's one of the largest industries in the world, and it's quite complex, right? It has a lot of moving parts to it. It's a lot of sub industries. But I would say if I were to explain finance in layman terms, it's basically whenever you need to do something, you need capital to enable you to do it, right? It's always two inputs in a sense, it's labor and capital. And the finance industry has sort of been created to facilitate, help control the flow of capital, I would say.
Whoa. That is okay, so that is the 30,000 flight level version. Let's go down to 20 or 10,000. So
Yeah.
and I think you said something very important. Finance is not finance. I mean, there's an absurdity in itself to say what is working in finance like.
Yeah.
So let's be a little bit more specific. So as an investment manager, so in that investment portion of finance,
Yeah.
what is that? What is that about? What does that look like?
So I would say on the investment side, or we call it the asset management side, it's the side of the finance industry that basically controls flow of capital. So basically, who gets, which company gets more capital, which ones get less. And what we're aiming to do is try to, if we view capital or money as a scarce a resource, it's where does that money, the return on that money, where is it bigger and where is it bigger? So basically moving capital from where it has lower return to an area where it has higher return.
And
So we grow the pie of capital.
you grow the pie. So basically, you're looking for other companies, for example, that have, let's make it this very simple, that have a certain product or thing going for themselves, where you see there's an upside in the market that they're in. So you direct the funds to that company because there's a larger upside than somewhere else potentially. Okay. So this means in a way, finance is and here's the thing, one of the darker powers in the back to steer where the world is going, because wherever the capital flows, the momentum rises, correct?
Yeah. I guess, it's interesting that you raise it because that was sort of that cynical view is the reason I think I ended up in finance in general. So I I grew up, I mean, just to take a step back, I grew up with Indian parents in Norway.
Yes.
And my parents were very eager to kind of show us the real world. So we spent a month a year, each year in Delhi, India. And so for those of you who have visited Norway and India, you know that, it's pretty starkly different societies. And it made me, it was formative in a lot of ways, but I think in a career way, it made me kind of want to make the world a better place, as kind of cheesy as that sounds. I wanted to kind of reduce global economic inequality. And there's a lot of roads lead to Rome, or all roads lead to Rome. There's different ways to tackle that. You can, become a regulator, you can become a politician, you can become a journalist, emphasizing you can become an entrepreneur that creates solutions, um, to help get more and more people into the economy. I think when I decided to decided to go to business school, and I went to the Norwegian School of Economics, and I think that was where I developed this quote unquote cynical view that the people with outsized power and influence in society in order to make society better are people who either sit on capital, so wealthy people, or people who control where the capital flows. And given that that I am from Norway, and we happen to have one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world right now, probably the largest, then it was a very kind of natural course for me to want to work there. And the benefit of the sovereign wealth fund also is, not only is it a big chunk of money, I think around now it's around $2 trillion,
Yes.
but it is also, we have one client, which is the Norwegian public, that is a small, relatively homogeneous, relatively highly educated population that wants to spend that money to kind of improve the world, right? One company at a time. And so that's a very kind of good client to work for. And then the other thing is that we are long-term capital, right? So,
Yes.
when you were initially asking about finance, and I was saying, a part of finance is asset management. um, a lot of that capital is short-term gains. They're looking for short-term gains on their investments. We have a 100-year time horizon. We're not planning on paying that money out anytime soon. So that means we can help companies take good long-term decisions on how to become profitable 50, 100 years into the future. And we'll be there with them. We're kind of, permanent money for them, right?
Yes.
I'm explaining this in kind of a simple, the most.
It's just you're giving me seven options where I want to go with my next question. So because you took us there. So I've worked in Oslo. I think I think I told you when we had the short brief. So I know what Norway feels like.
Mm,
But I just returned from Delhi, and
yeah,
so when you go to Chandri Chowk, to the market in Old Delhi, then you probably see the a stark difference between when you describe Norway or Delhi. When
yeah,
you go to Gurgaon in the south, where the whole industry is blossoming, blooming, I'd say there is not so much difference anymore to what you can possibly find in Norway. I
yeah,
mean, technically, if you're in India, forget about working out outside. It's just because you got to be in the gym. There's no walking paths, hiking paths, anything especially. So, but that's so there's still stark differences. But I think India is catching up.
I love that you have visited Delhi. It's a magical place.
It is.
It's a rootless city, I will say, but it's magical nonetheless. I was born in 1988, right? So from then to now, India is a kind of an economic miracle of a country. I think the only country that has had similar type of growth trajectory is China, but India has been able to do it as a democracy, which is,
Yes, amazing.
impressive. And it goes to show, I think what makes me very proud of having Indian heritage is that sort of, a hustler mentality that I think I inherited from my parents. And you sort of scrappy, you accept what you've been given, and then you try to make it bigger.
Yes.
And I feel that most Indians are like that, and that's probably why Indians do really well in the societies that we emigrate to, right? not only in our own society, but also the places where we are immigrants. Um, and it's been an amazing thing. And one thing is to read about economic growth in the paper, but another thing is to see it in your family members, right? It's only my parents who left. So most of my uncles and aunts are all there. My grandparents are all there. So you're seeing it in your own family, your own blood, which is it's incredible. To the second part of your
That's why
question.
they call it Incredible India.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was a marketing shtick, but
But
yes.
it's a great marketing stick.
Yeah, it's an accurate one, yes. But in terms of the second part of your question on whether in my work now, can I be, do I get to work with Indian companies? Yes. So we are, as you mentioned in the intro, we're one of the largest investors in the world. We have a lot of investment in India. Top of my head, I don't know how much money we have in India, but in the Indian equity market. My job, so I started off in my career in finance at the Sovereign Wealth Fund covering emerging markets. And India,
Yes.
as you know, is
Yes.
one of the largest emerging markets. So investing and finding investments in India was part of my job as an analyst. 2 years ago, I pivoted out of the investment side of Norges Bank and into what we call active ownership, which essentially, you know, to put it simply, because we're a large owner of companies, because when you buy a stock, you buy part of the
Yes.
company. And I think people tend to forget that because for them, finance seems so kind of, we use a lot of lingo, but essentially, if you're buying a stock of a company, you're buying part of the company. And because we're a large owner, we are one of the largest owners of Indian companies. And that gives us sway.
Yes.
So one of what I do in my current job is basically engage with companies, vote on general meetings, but basically try to influence how companies are run. So talking to their management, their boards, and everything around expectations on their net zero targets, or whether how they treat their human capital or their supply chain, and ensuring that there's no human rights violations, or how is their CEO compensated? Is she or he as aligned with the company as they should be being paid for? Does the board have the expertise that is necessary to oversee the operations of this company and the strategy of it? So that's my day-to-day job now, which means a lot of meetings with company management and boards, and trying to understand their point of view, but also influencing and giving them input on our point of view as a large owner.
Oh, so you're basically transitioning over to my side of things. Because I'm the consultant that sits in those meetings and helps them to design the strategies. And basically what it sounds like you're a private equity representative almost in some sorts.
I mean, yeah, it's private equity. They own the whole company
But
in most cases,
yes.
right? And they have more influence because they're on the boards and they're a full 100% owner in most cases. We are just a kind of minority shareholder. But yes, we do act like owners in the sense that we're trying to influence the company,
Yeah, and I think by
the
the way,
direction.
I pronounced that wrong. It's a Norges Bank,
Norges
not
Bank, yeah.
Norges Bank. I think if the Norges Bank has an opinion brought to them through you, I think that opinion has a certain
Way.
point for them. Yes,
Exactly. There's some gravity behind it.
there's some gravity behind this. And just a side detail, what you will probably like. So we're currently running the strategy for a global company in India. And strategies typically have these pillars like
Hmm.
operations, supply chain, product. So,
Right.
and this morning, it's actually funny, it's a coincidence. This morning, I was talking to the CHRO in India,
Mm.
and I did not like or fully appreciate her HR part that she contributed because we all agreed the pillar is called Careers Made in India. And the entire strategy was geared towards getting Indian talent to get out of India because that's what we've seen in the last 2 decades, that India has supplied the world with talent.
Mm.
But the aim of that company is no, 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 no. We want it to be India the place to be. That this global company sends people from their global locations into India because there's something to learn in India.
Yeah.
And that is a rethinking quite interesting, which I think also should start to happen in India, that it's not just expats coming into India and showing them how the Western world works, but India is such an amazing place, and I think it has so much to offer that you can send candidates into India to learn.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that. I would say that it used to be the narrative, right? That, you had this brain drain going from India because young Indians didn't feel that there were enough opportunities. I mean, that was the reason my parents left and my friends' parents left to Europe or to US. Or I would say that that narrative is changing, and
Yes,
it has been changing over the past 5 years, as you say. I think it's actually accelerating these days. One interesting reflection I've done is that I didn't really grow up in India, right? I'm Norwegian. I'm a Norwegian
yes,
national,
yes.
but my parents taught me Hindi and they gave me that cultural understanding and exposure. And I would say, I'm in the thought process of now considering moving to India at one point, because I feel that the energy that you feel when you go to, the metropolitan cities of Bombay and Delhi and Bangalore and Chennai is that, this is where it's at. You feel you're
That's where
in
the
the
action
center.
is.
Yeah, you
Yes,
you feel you're at the center of the universe. And I'm sure that was kind of the energy that used to be. I'm saying it still is in New York, but it used to be more, and you see that more in emerging markets and particularly in Asia, and it's exciting to be a part of, and it's been something that, that in combination, so more opportunities, but I think it's also a combination of, and I don't mean to make this a political conversation, but the kind of anti-immigration sentiment that a lot of Western politicians share, it's hard to not take that personally, right? I think that the anti-immigrant sentiment also really influenced us
yeah,
because I'm fourth generation immigrant, right? My
yes.
grandparents, my parents, and then me by myself to the US. And it's hard to not take that personally. And it's also incorrect, right? It's just sort of a way to scapegoat.
And just let me, I mean, put my weight behind it. I'm 100% with you, and I don't even know if it's a political conversation. It's a data conversation.
Mm,
When you see that half the CEOs of all the Fortune 500 companies in the United States have either first or second immigration immigrants.
yeah.
And you can see this around the world because people who immigrate, and it's not just a conversation in this country, they want to succeed.
Y
Everybody who listens hears my English. I'm German originally.
mm,
I mean, I have a few more nationalities, but I can't get rid of the German. So I'm an immigrant here too.
yeah.
And I like to think like we're all immigrants wherever we are. Yeah. So there's
Depends on your time horizon.
Yeah, that brings me to the first part I wanted to cover with you was the finance piece. The second one is the intentionality, and I think you're almost acting in a sort of tradition because the intentionality in what you do but didn't begin with you, but it probably began much earlier, at
Mm,
least with your parents. There was an intentionality where they said, maybe we have a better future somewhere else.
mm,
They took you to this amazing place, Norway. By the way, I worked in Norway. It can be pretty dark and cold up there, so that's a change.
yeah.
And now you're talking to me from New York City. I'm in New Jersey.
Mm.
So tell me more about that entire aspect of intentionality. Because let me just say one thing. I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and this is one of the most comprehensive LinkedIns I've seen in a while.
That's that's not a good thing, is it?
No, 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 no. That is neutral. That just tells someone who is more often on LinkedIn, this means someone cares about their
Mm,
decision making and someone
mm,
is intentional. There's nothing wrong with being intentional. It's
mm,
actually, I don't know a single CEO, man or woman, doesn't matter, who was never intentional about becoming CEO. They are
mm,
all intentional.
right.
So intentionality is key, but we touched a little bit of this. What's the role of intentionality in your life?
I mean, I thought it was great that you actually noticed that, because it is definitely something I've consciously and unconsciously always been. I guess I don't know where to start. I think it was. the fact that I wanted to achieve certain things in life. And, I don't think it's not like you say, I'm going to be president one day and then you're 5 and then everything you do goes towards that. It usually is kind of sub goals that you put in place. Like you were talking about how you help companies with strategies. They don't make a 50-year strategy. They make a 5-year and then a 5-year or a 10-year. And then you're kind of building, and there were certain goals I had, right? One goal was, I'm just kind of thinking about, one goal was that I wanted to get into an Ivy League school. I remember that being one
Good
of my
goal.
goals.
Very
And
good.
that goal came from a very kind of silly thing where I had watched on television that the Ivy League schools were like the best schools in the world, or back when we
Yeah,
were kind of, America was more formative than maybe it is now for young people. But Ivy
it was.
League was sort of like if you get into an Ivy League school, if you're a student of an Ivy League school, you can claim that you're smart. And I think I had this need for people to think that I was smart. And I think that came from, being immigrants, being a different skin color, having that chip on your shoulder. So I remember thinking, if I get into an Ivy League school, then nobody can question my intelligence, right?
Yes.
So that was
Yes.
one silly goal. Another one was that I wanted to live in New York City. And that came from a goal of, I grew up being really into hip hop and hip hop culture. New York was sort of the epitome of cool. It was the birthplace of hip hop, and I was a hip hop dancer for many years. So that was sort of like another, goal. And then it was a goal, like I told you, talking about capital allocators and how much outsized power and influence we can have about improving the lives of millions and billions. And then it became a goal to work at the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Norway.
Yes.
So along my life, I've always set these kind of, that some would say were really lofty goals, and then I noticed that I could achieve them. And that gives you a belief in yourself that I don't think I had as a child, but because I didn't have parents who were kind of hover parents. They were sort of like, you had to kind of prove yourself a lot. So I needed to prove to myself that I was able to do it. And the more goals I was able to reach, the more I thought, maybe I am not as dumb as I thought. Well,
You
maybe
sure
I can
weren't.
actually, maybe I can actually achieve things that I set my mind into. I think another thing with intentionality is that I think a lot of young people get caught up in what you should do, and being intentional, you have to be intentional with what you're intentional about as well, and it's realistic to you as a human being. I think a lot of young people try to kind of, in the age of social media, they're trying to kind of, they see all these other alternatives on who they can be instead of listening to kind of what they themselves should aim to do and what makes them unique. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I think, when I decided I wanted to work at Norges Bank, I went to a school in Norway that a lot of people, you become a potato, basically. I studied economics and business. And a lot of people do that, right? So I remember thinking, how can I differentiate myself and get a job at Norges Bank? And I spent a lot of time thinking, what is it that differentiates me vis-a-vis, the average kind of Frederick or Henrik who gets jobs at these places?
Leifson, Olafsson.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing I realized when I looked at the kind of quote unquote stereotype that started in our industry, I thought, I can learn, financial modeling. I can learn valuation. I can learn all those things. That's kind of the easy part. The hard part that is understanding of, I wanted to focus on emerging markets. So the understanding of cultures, I speak four languages fluently. I have lived, at that point, I'd lived in 5 countries, both emerging markets and frontier markets. I was good at adopting cultures quickly and people feeling that I understand them, even though I've never been to the country they're from. But that kind of cultural mindset, multicultural mindset, was something that those guys could not learn. And I thought, hmm, maybe I should then lean in on that. And when I decided to take a second master's degree at Columbia because I wanted to get into an Ivy League school, I decided to lean in fully and I decided to take a master's in international affairs and focus on investing in emerging markets. And I think the reason for saying all of this, my message to young people is we say to young people, try to be as good as at a lot of things as possible. But I would say, yes, to an extent, but eventually try to focus on where you naturally have a leg up for either personal reasons or talent wise, wherever it is, but try to lean in on that because that's what differentiates you. And as someone who hires now, for me, it's easier to hire someone who's very clear on what they want.
So talking to you, I hope it comes across because it's meant as a good feedback. I sense the European, but I'm conflicted because you come even more across as a global citizen. And
That's
that is,
nice.
so when we go to the European things, I'm like, yeah, we have that same layer of understanding, which Europeans all of a sudden have the moment they meet somewhere outside of Europe.
Mm.
In Europe, no. You're French or you're German or you're Norwegian. Outside of Europe, we're all Europeans.
Yeah, exactly. We're
Now,
better dressed than everybody.
yes. So in a way, so number one, I think you managed to get the global citizen piece dialed in. And I think that reflects in your job because you've always also lived in the emerging markets. You serve those markets as a finance manager and you have this beautiful purpose also.
Mm. I don't think of myself that way because I'm not as, I'm not, I don't consider myself narcissistic. I hope,
No, but
I
you're
hope I'm
aware,
not.
you're
But
self-aware.
yeah, I guess, yeah, it's nice to be able to travel to any country and feel that you can connect with the people there.
Yes.
And that is so lovely because, it's interesting when I engage with companies and cultures around the world. It's nice to see how disarming I think that is something I feel is kind of my superpower, and I know that was one of your questions. I think I'm good at disarming people because I think they feel that I understand them, even if I haven't been to Istanbul before, but I'm talking to a Turkish company. But I think it's about once you've had enough layers of cultures, you're able to kind of adopt. And I think one thing, and this goes to kind of looks as well. I think growing up, standing out in Norway because of my skin color was at times tough, but I'm now very grateful for the way I look because a lot of places I visit, they think I'm from there too. I kind of have this like ethnical
Yeah.
ambiguity, which makes you always never be treated as an other. That is wonderful. You get access to so much more if I remember going to Rio for the first time. I go to Rio a lot. I love that city. And I would be able to walk around in the favela alone.
As a Brazilian,
As a
basically.
Brazilian, nobody was looking at me twice. And like not a lot of tourists can do that without kind of really drawing attention. And those things are just really nice.
Nice. So I have a beautiful story for you, but before I want to get to the last portion of the message for young people. So my youngest is 15. And there's this picture is 5, 6 years ago. She grew up in 3 different countries, Germany, close to Swiss border here, and in Canada. And there's this beautiful picture outside on the wall of the driveway. And she's between 5, 6 of her friends. And there's a super blonde, white-skinned, beautiful girl from Finland, one of her great friends. Then there's a Korean girl, originally Korean, an Egyptian girl, and 2 or 3 more. I can't remember. And the interesting thing is she does not see the skin color. She doesn't see it. And not
Mm,
because we taught her to be inclusive or anything. It is something she grew up with. And she said, no, this is Clara is the name. This is Clara. This is Lilia. The difference she sees is the personality, not the color. That was so eye-opening for me. You can't believe it. I mean,
mm,
I grew up in Germany in the 1970s and 80s before global immigration.
mm,
There were only white people, Vaishali, nothing
mm.
else. And I think this new generation that grows up in this world, they
Yeah.
have a different focus,
I
hopefully.
hope so. I
Yeah.
hope
No,
so.
I hope so. And this is how we should look at people. But hey, because I feel like we could make a 2 hour conversation out of this, but I want to be economic with our time. I love the point that you've mentioned it a few times for those who are starting, or let's say those who are in the first couple of years in their careers.
Mm,
So the things that I think and amazing. So what was driving you is you had your high dreams, big dreams, Ivy League school. And by the way, they might be silly, but why would it be silly to go to a great school? There's nothing silly about it. So don't. So this is number one. Number two is live in New York City. Number three is improving the lives of of people. I guess that is not how you phrased it back then. And then you said the most important thing for me: don't be like everybody else. Look
mm,
for stuff that differentiates you, but go alongside your strengths. So when you and I'm summarizing, but feel free to come in. So when you're good in the water as a swimmer,
mm.
and then people tell you, oh, but you should also be a fast runner, then I'd say, yeah, do some running because it balances, the
Muscle,
body.
yeah.
But basically, keep competing in the water because apparently this is where you have a leg up. Be a swimmer, and it's okay to be a swimmer if you're good in the water. That's basically what you said.
Mm.
Don't try to turn yourself into a
To a
runner
runner.
if
Yeah.
your superpower is swimming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. But also maybe, you know, think of, I guess, there's always kind of a degree of something, right? I think broadening the scope as a young person to open every door. And
Yes.
then, as you say, kind of narrowing more and more towards something specific. I think it also is becoming more and more relevant for young people and for myself is, now that we're kind of entering the AI revolution, where can I beat artificial intelligence? What can artificial intelligence not do? Or at least for the next 10, 15, 20 years, right? We don't really know, but to what extent can I position myself to distinguish or pick a lane that is not beatable by artificial intelligence?
I'm really curious. Can we answer that question today? I have that conversation. I no.
No, and I guess I don't have kids, but I have 2 nephews, 7 and 10, and, my brother is an engineer, and, we come from a very academic family, both our parents and my brother and I, and my brother and I talk about this regards to my nephews all the time. What do we tell them to study? Like, what
Yes.
do we tell them to focus on? The only thing we can tell them now is work hard in school, get good grades, be active, have hobbies, expand your horizon, expose them as much in the world as possible. And if we come from a place of privilege, which as Norwegians we automatically do, give them everything we can give them of impulses. But it's hard to predict, what should they study. I read this article like a couple of weeks ago about computer science majors, right? Not getting jobs now.
Yeah.
But when I was studying, that was encouraged to go into computer science.
Yep. And now they're all being laid off in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, and they would get a starting salary of 3K, right?
Yeah.
10 years ago. Like, so it's scary, to be honest. I love to be a glass half full person, and I am, but it really, I'm maybe, coming towards 1/3 into my career, and this is something I weekly think about. And I think people that are young should think about this and don't put our heads in the sand because it's going to hit us.
Yes. I agree. So what I would almost put against it when the internet rose in the 1990s
Right.
and with the dot-com bubble that burst. Everybody thought that's the end of the internet, and it has created more jobs since then that we could
Yeah,
ever possibly imagine.
yeah,
Maybe AI is, of course, with different aspects, is a kind of same revolution. And at the moment, we're approaching the investment bubble, which everybody
yeah.
talks about, and then it'll calibrate itself to some extent. Because here's the thing: what do we want to do? Keep 8 billion people unemployed and just have AI do all the value creation? There will be a solution.
And I would say, our at Norges Bank, our CEO, Nikolai Tangen, was very early adopter for us to adopt to AI. So I use it every day in my job, every day. And it has made me very efficient, but also it has made me, my title is a senior stewardship manager. It has made me way better at my job because I don't have to do the mundane admin tasks. I can focus on our engagement with companies being the best they can ever be. And being able to make my research ahead of engagements and meetings and learning about these companies to make that more efficient actually makes me more valuable as an advisor and an owner when I talk to the companies. It's interesting. We also engage with all these large companies, and I tend to ask them these days, you know, what are you doing with technology? How are you adopting to AI? How are you doing it in a responsible manner? Because that's also really important.
Yes,
But what do you think your labor stock is going to look like for the next 5 or 10 years? Do you think it's going to be equal amounts of people working or less or more? And most of them, at least for the time being, say, I don't envision us doing mass layoffs, but honestly, the nature of the work it's gonna differ.
it has to. After everything I've learned from you, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
So you do have the cultural background and power culture in terms of, I mean, having understood quite some of the world and having learned that wherever you go, it's all gray. There is no truths anymore, right? That's what we learn when we travel, when we move between countries. What's true in Norway doesn't have to be true in America. So that is the first key experience. Second key experience, you went to Ivy School, you have great education. With your job, you've had the insight how businesses and companies are run, and now you're a senior stewardship manager. This is the classic um, build up to become a CEO.
You think so?
I would say so, not think so.
I mean, becoming executive in a company also entails a great deal of luck, right? So
Okay, so that would be another conversation. I would completely disagree with that.
really,
Yes, 100%.
well, you would know better than me. I
Yes,
don't.
this I actually do know. Many things I don't know better than you. This one I know.
Yeah, I mean, I started off. You talked about how I'm an intentional person, and I agree with you. I think, I'm in my mid-30s now. I've actually become less intentional for my own well-being's sake. Meaning, I think sometimes you need to sort of take a rest, enjoy the life you've been able to build for yourself, and then see, what is next out there. What is my next goal? If that is to become a CEO, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to be in those positions? I think
I
most of the people you interview or would never turn an opportunity like that down. But I'm also kind of just being open to letting life sort of happen, the
yes,
way it's intended to.
I would say that's a phase.
I'm sure. Sure, it is a phase, but I think it's sometimes necessary, right? The plane goes up and then it kind of goes on autopilot and then maybe it needs to go
Yes,
up again.
you do have to calibrate yourself because basically when you look at what you were set out to do, you've achieved this. And
Mm,
typically you reach this level and there's no other Ivy League to go to. So what's the next Ivy League New York City for you?
yeah.
And you're
Norges
even in a
Bank. Yeah.
position where you can exercise some influence, which you were
Mm,
hoping to.
mm,
Just, I've always wanted to live in the United States for whatever reasons. The 80s movies that messed with all our heads. It is, and then I achieved that. I had my own business, and then I had like a, that like a phase, I need to readjust what I want because I've basically achieved what I wanted.
mm,
And this takes a couple of years actually,
yeah.
because it's not just like around that because it's a journey to find your next journey. It's
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
interesting. It's a journey to find your
Yeah,
next
for
journey.
sure. No, for
And
sure.
life happens in these phases. And because you've mentioned it, you have about the first third of your career. This means you're far from being done.
Mm,
And you're not, it's not like the last two-thirds are smooth sailing and everything's going to be like this. Because
mm,
I do believe if you're intentional once, you are intentional forever. You might just have different levels of intentionality.
yeah. Well, I guess one thing that I've always, I told you I started off also considering being a journalist, right? And I have tremendous respect for that field. However, less and less of kind of influence maybe they have because of the fragmented environment we're seeing and kind of maybe the loss of truth, that truth has become something
You have to
that
fight for the truth. Oh
people
my God.
it's called an alternative fact apparently. But, one thing that I noticed, I was in a TV show that came out this year in Norway, and they followed me around for a year, and it's only in Norwegian, but they followed me around camera crew for a year, and then it came out. So it was like a docu series about what I do for work. And I do remember thinking, I'm pretty good at that. Like, should that, should that be something I lean into? So yeah, I think it's if you're in the lucky situation that you can lean in different directions and you have the kind of economic grounding, knock on wood, to do that, and the security around you and a good health, then why not try different things, right? But yes, I am definitely on the journey to find my new journey.
Yeah, that's a good journey.
Mm.
So this is where we leave it. Hey, as usual, we prepared a beautiful summary. So Vaishali's journey shows what's possible when you approach your career with direction instead of drift. Success isn't just about talent or timing. It's about making deliberate choices, staying curious, and having the courage to define your path before someone else defines it for you. Her story embodies what it means to be a global citizen, navigating cultures, countries, and expectations while holding on to what makes you unique. She reminds us that differentiation doesn't come from blending in, but from staying true to who you are, even when the world around you changes. For anyone standing at the edge of a new beginning, whether it's a job, a move, or a leap into the unknown, Vaishali's message is clear. Strive for the best version of yourself, not the easiest path. And if her story resonates with you, take a moment to ask not what expected of you, but what truly matters to you. That's where direction begins.